if that happens. I mean, let's be very blunt. We were blunt about this, during the Kickstarter, afterwards, now. This game will not succeed if all we do is attract players on day one and even month one, and then a couple months into it, nobody wants to play it because they just get killed every time they go out into RVR and they can't contribute and they can't have fun. So, we have to be really careful about that. And I think, as Ben just said, the way we're laying out the stats system is really one of the ways that we're going to do this. Question that scrolled by, sorry for, again, mispronouncing names, but it sounded like Hellsech asked about practice in and training for skills and stats. And so the answer is that there won't be any like offline training. I mean, this is not, Eve or some other games. However, we have said that we will certainly be willing to put some amount of time for stats and other things that people can do when they are not heavily engaged or even engaged in RVR. Because let's face it, there are going to be times this is an RVR only game, or RVR centric game, certainly. RVR focused, not even, yeah, it's everything. You're going to have some time when you may not be able to find a battle right away, or you may come in at just a dead hour. And so we think that players should be able to spend a little time practicing, especially, again, given the magic and combat system. Okay, so Visor, we are limited with the weight of items, but will this mean that moving a lot of items will be dangerous? Could enemy take our items? So I got this. In terms of looting, we're going to talk about that in progression. And yes, going out fully loaded will weigh you down. On the other hand, maybe there are other ways to get items, caravans, and other players. Or, for example, if you think of Giants, for example, which are players that have aged a bit and might have gotten bigger and might be even better at taking things, across the way for you. So, is it going to be really dangerous for you to just go out there because you might lose all your items? No, you're not going to. This is not a FFA looting game. I mean, you can't, go and kill a player and take everything they've had. We've said this before. What would be dangerous, of course, is if your carrying capacity is right about its limit, or even you're trying to go above it. Yeah, you're not going to be moving as quickly. You're not going to be fighting as quickly. That's the bigger risk. Let's see. Okay, this is one we should answer. How are buffs going to affect stats? So, I'm sorry, I'm taking, I take this from Ben as well, because it's something I feel pretty strongly about. If we allow buffs in the sense of strength buffs, the classic, hey, you now have +5, to your strength or to your health or to intelligence or whatever stat, whatever game. If we do that, we're kind of, shooting ourselves in the foot. We've talked about how we don't want a lot of those kind of buffs. A lot of advantages to these stats on items. Well, if we just go and say, well, you can get a ton of them from the magic system or from the combat system, then all we've done is substitute one problem for another. We want to keep those down to a minimum. And, can I say there'll be zero? You never want to say that as a developer. But I can say that, if you're going to look for the buff system to be heavily reliant on stat buffs, not going to happen. Thank you, Max. Okay, from Glylor. Will the weight of items be treated realistically or more fantasy weights?
We're trying to go with realism in as many contexts as we can get away with in this game. Obviously, dragons and magic and all sorts of BSC things. It's not going to allow us to go 100% realism. This is not a simulation. We're just trying to abstract things less. So when you look at the items and you look at the weights and you look at the properties of things, they will be what you would somewhat expect from reality. It's not going to be vastly different, but it's going to be relatively close.
Friar J, hi. Will stats be rock, paper, scissors based too?
I don't think that that's true. There's not really rock paper scissors design inherent in the stat system itself. That's more in the classes and the class based abilities and the way that different specializations of different characters are going to interrelate to one another. So it's not in the stats per se, but it's in the characters and the archetypes and the abilities.
Gumshoe, will characters somehow be able to lose stats permanently, old age, etc.? That is something Ben and I have talked about. It's something we're thinking about. It's not something that's even close to be decided. It's a lot of things to think about. Do we want to punish players, essentially, because that's what it is, for just being around longer? Probably not. Do we want there to be some things that could lower your stats? Absolutely. Whether it is, because of age, that's something that, we're going to talk about. DJ, if stats aren't relevant, because this is another really important point, if stats aren't relevant, what will crafters have to do? Great question. It's one we have answered before, not now, but during the Kickstarter. It's really simple. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this during, I believe, another presentation. We have really kind of emphasized the importance of crafters. And so, if we didn't have other things for the crafters to do, other things that they could do to their weapons or their armor to sell them, then, why be a crafter? So, think about a sword, for example. We are, we as gamers have become very accustomed now to the pluses on swords. Okay, it's plus to strength, plus to dex, plus to damage, whatever. A sword is more than just some, magical ability that's put on it. It has a weight. It has a resilience. It has, how much damage it can take, how much damage it can deal. There are so many things that, go into the making of an item and its effectiveness.
You will find with more English using if you're excited.
Sorry, off track. There are so many things that can go into, how a sword is and how useful it is, that I'm not the least bit worried about whether we had to rely on the bonuses that may have been put on it, again, in a very traditional sense. Same with armor. If armor, for example, absorbs damage, that's a kind of important thing. Same with resistances that we could put on, armor. So there are things that you can do without, again, relying on the very typical plus whatever to a stat. Tana, will you be able to reduce stats with spells against other players? In other words, can you debuff a stat? We'll think about that. I mean, certainly if we don't have buffs to stats, it might be a little unfair to do debuffs, on stats, but it is something that, we do have to think about.
Yeah, I would say look at the derived stats, not the primary and secondary stats when you're talking about buffs and debuffs. There certainly will be persistent status effects on players that snare you, make you run slower, or increase the damage that you do for a brief period of time, but don't expect there to be, the wall of icons.
Exactly. And I think that's the difference. I mean, look at, and Ben just gave a great example, look at a snare. Look at turning, for example, land to mud. There are things that you can do that will have an effect on a character that are not as, and it's not that they're tropish, because, look, they're perfectly fine way of doing things in other games. But you don't have to rely on, those kind of stat buffs, to accomplish something. I don't understand, I can't see the name Zhao Easy. I don't understand the health stat in the design doc. Will each body part have its own health value? That is something that we are certainly talking about, and we'll talk about more. The how your body is represented in the game is obviously very important. It's very important from, a visual sense for you as the character, but from ours as designers. So, you'll see another presentation where we'll be talking about just that. Let's see. A question that I wouldn't normally answer, but it's something that I'm kind of, anal about. Will there be, what about buff bots? Are you allowing them? Ben's smiling because I'm sure he saw that question and goes, all right, that's catnip to me. The answer is, look, no. We are, taking action against that, both, Ben and I from a design standpoint, and we'll do it from a CS standpoint. Buff bots aren't evil. It's just something that people do and, sometimes encouraged by the game, game designers to use. We want to move away from that. We're not going to be encouraging buff bots. We do really not want to make it, both, either a necessary or even very useful to have in the game. And so, you'll see more of this as we go forward.
There have been several about movement speed.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Take it.
About that. It is one of the things we're doing differently. You don't see in most other games. Characters will move at different speeds from one another based on various things. We are going to make sure that groups can stay together. There's going to be a mechanic that allows you to match your speed to other people, so your group can all run together and not get separated that way. But you are going to have slower moving and faster moving characters, and you're going to have to make the choices that lead you towards one way or the other of that. So that's going to be something that you're going to have to worry about.
Question from Rhaegar about respecs. The one thing that we have said that is absolutely going to be true, there won't be a lot of, easy respecs in the game. We are toying with the idea of having an initial respec when you create your account and you create your first character. And of course, there will be lots of respecs given if we feel, or even the players truly feel, that we had to rebalance, nerf, change, alter, fold, staple, or mutilate your character in some way. I mean, that's only fair. But in terms of easy respecs that you can simply pick up every day, every week, not going to happen. Next, Kusalev, what about stat pots? For those who think everyone should know, pots equals potions. Not going to be a lot of easy potions either, especially for stat gains. Do I think potions can play a role in this game? Absolutely. Do I think they should play hang on, I got to take this potion before I fight you. Oh, you hit me, take another potion. Now what we're going for. On the other hand, if there are potions, just like, changing weapons or other things we've talked about, hey, if you're going to, want to actually go into your backpack and take out a potion, while somebody is swinging that two-handed sword on you, go for it. Can't wait to see it. Grease Monkey 3, your question about initial character creation, we answered before. I just want you to let you know that initial character creation is important, but it is not so important that unless you absolutely gimped your character on purpose, that you've actually gimped your character. There's been a number of questions about specific stats for crafters. I just want you to let you know that that is something we have talked about. It is not something that we have decided on yet, other than to say, look, if the stats we're using have to be jury-rigged to work for crafters, I'd rather have crafter stats. I mean, it's in one of the documents I wrote. It doesn't mean there will be. It doesn't mean there won't be. It simply means until we actually lay everything out for the crafting system and see how it works, I won't commit to it. The only thing we will commit to is obviously we care an awful lot about our crafters. And if what we're doing with the regular stat system doesn't work for them, we'll make some changes. After all, they're their own class. Duraferoth, if swinging a Warhammer increases your strength, would defending, helping a crafter gather resources increase strength? I guess it depends what you're doing. I mean, if you've got a high strength and you're helping someone pick posies, You know what? I'm not going to have a lot.